Nice of them to remodeling.
So it sounds like that there's, especially in Rancho de Luna, which is the ranch that you own, but there's a lot of.
Thanks, come guys.
Okay. But there's a lot of trades that happen between musicians or studio time. Do you think that was important to have musicians trading, bartering?
I do. Can everyone hear her question? So,
Am I speaking loud enough?
There you go. Yeah,
all right, we'll use the microphone.
excellent.
All right. Yeah, it was actually, I really wanted Jamie to remodel the bathroom from Arctic Monkeys because he's a bricklayer by trade before he was in Arctic Monkeys and is hugely famous and successful. But I think it is important for people to trade, barter, and help each other in any form, music or just life in general.
Great, yeah, that's good. What words of wisdom would you have to say to small communities that are trying to start a blossoming music scene? Do you have any sage wisdom for them? Or?
I don't have any sage wisdom for anyone, but I think you guys are doing a pretty good job of what you started here. You got a few folks here to see. I don't know why they're here to see me, but they're here. All right. But you guys are doing a great job of getting people interested and doing a grassroots thing of getting people to see cool new music and cool musicians and people that are putting on something like this. You guys are doing a great job.
So what was it like when you guys started out, or when you started out in the music industry?
Well, I started out in and it was pretty rough back then. It was, Prohibition, Great Depression.
Now it's just a weed prohibition and it's turning around.
No, but there definitely wasn't internet when I started out. So we all did, we did it on our own. Everyone passed around phone numbers to each other to get bands to come in, as you know, Jay. Like everybody had one contact in every city that, oh, Black Flag played at this place, so they know somebody that booked that place, and we played with them, and it's kind of like it is today, but now you can just dial it up really fast. Back then you had to send letters and look at zines.
So do you think it's easier, or do you think it's harder now?
I think it's way easier, way easier. You can find out everything about everyone pretty much in a click of a button now. I don't know if that's better or worse, but it's definitely easier.
What do you think about services like Spotify and Bandcamp and that for starting music?
I think it's pretty great for eliminating bands that you don't want to hear, because I listen to a lot because I like buying albums that I like, because I like supporting artists I like, but I do hear a lot about bands that there's a lot of hype with bands that turn out to be just hype and not good music. And I think Spotify and Tidal and stuff like that is a way to listen and see if you want to invest your money.
Yeah.
But going back to the old guy like me, you had to buy the album and listen to it and then, whatever. But now you can at least kind of cruise through it and see if there's stuff that you like.
So coming off of something that was traditionally analog, or a time where everything was traditionally analog, what do you think about the difference in like digital format versus records and analog format?
Oh, definitely analog is 10 times better. That being said, almost always just listen to albums on my phone,
Yeah.
and not even with headphones. I work with a lot of loud bands live and at my studio, and I tend to listen to like my computer and not super loud. But if I really want to listen to an album that's been recorded well, it definitely helps if it was analog
Yeah.
to begin with. Digital definitely doesn't sound as good.
So tell us a little bit about your studio. How did it start? The story behind it.
My studio started with a guy named Fred Drake. He was driving around Joshua Tree, California, and he found a couple of houses for rent and decided he wanted to live at one of the houses. And he always wanted to have a studio, and he was a really great engineer and a great guy and a really awesome musician. And once he moved there, I actually was living in New Orleans and I had a restaurant, and he called me one day when I was working and asked if I wanted to be partners in the studio with him. And I really wasn't ever expecting to leave New Orleans because I just invested everything I had and moved there, and I love that city. It's a really awesome city, and I had a great restaurant, and it was I had a venue, a restaurant, and a house in the same building. So I never really even left my house, very, very rarely, to go out anywhere. And when he asked me to do it, I really didn't want to do it, but our friend was selling the gear to make the restaurant for so cheap that I really couldn't say no. It was something, like I figured at some point I could go out there and record with him and it would be worth having, and I love Fred and hanging out with him anyway. So that's kind of how it all happened. I'm not really sure why he called me of all people. We were friends, but very strange that he would call someone that lived across the country to be a partner in a studio with him.
Do you think that's an important trait that musicians and people in creative industries need to have, is dropping everything for your passion or for something that you're...
Absolutely. I do think that a lot, and a lot of people ask me, how I get a lot of the gigs I have, and it really boils down to availability more than talent or anything. It does. And honestly, like half the people I know have gigs because they were available at the time. And, there's a million musicians, and only a certain amount can say yes to certain things. And I think that's why I've been in so many bands, because I was always available and ready to go.
Do you have a favorite gig that you ever had?
They're all great.
Yeah.
Just being able to play music and travel and like be here today is pretty phenomenal.
It sounds like you've toured a lot of the Canadian scene.
Oh, many, many, many times.
Do you have a favorite town that you've played at, or a favorite venue?
Probably here, I would say.
Right here.
Right here, right now. Always had great shows in Vancouver and Toronto, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, great.
And I will have a great show here one day. Yeah, we're gonna play on this stage. One day.
Canada has like a pretty expansive landscape, and it sounds like the desert does too. And I've noticed that a lot of documentaries that I've watched there talk about the expansiveness in the landscape and how that lends to creativity. Do you believe in that or subscribe to that?
Yes, I do. I think that a lot of times when people record in the cities, there's so many distractions. There's so much art and music and parties and bars and food and whatever that people concentrate a lot on. Just having a good time is, when you're in the desert, even though it's expansive, there's not a whole lot to do besides look at the expanse and enjoy yourselves. I think that makes you kind of focus in on what you're supposed to be doing.
And do you think that's part of the allure of Rancho de Luna and part of the mystique?
Oh yeah.
And can you hear that in the albums that, these musicians work on, or that you work on, or that you created yourself?
Definitely. Definitely. You can hear the air involved in that for sure.
And you've got a lot of reclaimed instruments that you use in the production of your albums. What do you think about incorporating that old sound kind of gives a uniqueness to those albums?
I think that every instrument has its own thing. I'm not someone that thinks you have to play an old instrument or a new instrument, or I think it's whatever you gravitate to that makes you feel like you want to create. I don't have any, I have a lot of guitars that are old and new, and they all make me feel like I want to create, because they all make you feel a different thing. And I don't think that anyone has to have a super rare guitar and amp to make the art they want to make. I think that you can use whatever you want.
Do you have a favorite instrument?
I've got a few favorite instruments that I've had that are old, but they were the one, I'm old, so it started when they were kind of newer when I bought them.
Yeah.
But I really don't think that people have to concentrate on or fixate on super rare things that everyone says is the thing to get that you can't afford, because there's been so many bands that have proven that theory completely wrong.
Yeah, I guess this goes back to just being really passionate, but it seems like it's important to be resourceful as a musician. So you think that's sort of the same, to be resourceful and use whatever you have?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
What's the weirdest thing you've ever used as an instrument?
Well.
Inside knowledge.
I think a dryer.
Really?
We used a dryer one time for percussion. That was pretty good.
What's the story behind that?
We just needed something that sounded deep for percussion. The dryer was in the way, so we kind of just started beating on that.
It's two birds, one stone there.
Yeah.
So, do you have any stories of times that you failed or succeeded as being a musician, or what led to that?
I wouldn't say I failed. I mean, even like the worst gigs sometimes are the best. One of my favorite shows I've ever played was in New Orleans with my band, the Gnarltones, and they were, between the band and our girlfriends or significant others was probably like 6 people, and that's probably one of the most fun shows I've ever played in my life. And so I don't think there really is any failing in doing art or music. I think at any time you're doing it is a win.
Yeah, right. You have there's a Show Us Your Junk episode where you're talking about how Joshua Homme wanted to get a bunch of musicians that you like to come together and make some music.
Yeah.
Um,
He wanted to start a thing called the Desert Sessions, which is where we got a lot of friends together to write and record music together. And I'm not really sure, but he had come up a few times to play with my band Earthlings. He had always played in a band called Caius, and it was always the 4 of them. They never really got a lot together until later, and then they invited like Mario Lally to come and play on their records, and he had written a couple of songs, and he thought it was cool that we were able to bring in, that we weren't precious about who we created with, you know, it wasn't like a closed clique. And he took it one step further, which was, well, I'll just invite my favorite musicians that don't know each other to come and see what happens. And it turned out really cool because these people had never met or played music together, and they're thrown out in this weird little house in the middle of nowhere and created some really cool stuff.
Right. Do you think that it's important to have that spontaneousness in all of that? Do you think that you can hear that in the records that you have, and sort of people playing off each other and having that chemistry, that spontaneous chemistry?
I don't think it's important, but I think it's fun.
Yeah.
I think it's a great thing to get people together that have never played together and see what happens. I love doing it all the time because you never know what's going to happen when you get different people together. But I don't think it's important, but I think it's always a fun try.
Do you have a favorite artist that you've recorded with, or a favorite experience from recording?
No, not really. I mean, I've enjoyed 99% of the people I've played with, and picking one would be pretty impossible because it's all different and fun.
So Earthquaker Devices, you use a lot of their pedals. Do you have a particular favorite of theirs, or what's the story behind that?
I love a lot of their stuff, but one of my favorites is called the Dispatch Master, and it's an echo and a reverb built in together now. I really love delay pedals and I love reverb, and it's, they make a lot of cool pedals, but I like that one the best.
Do you have any other particular companies that you really like to work with or use?
Yeah, I did. I have a lot of different companies. I've been very, very fortunate over the years to be friends with, and I created a pedal called the Roadrunner Buzz Octave Flying Machine Wah with a guy named Dr. No, who makes incredible art and pedals together. And he makes some pretty intense things. TC Electronics makes a lot of cool stuff. My friend Brad Davis from Fu Manchu makes stuff called Creepy Fingers. He kind of takes older designs and makes them his. But I mean, everybody's making really cool things now. It's funny, when I was a kid, there were only a couple of pedals that you could really use, you know? Now everyone's making very, very cool things that are fun to experiment with.
Yeah, cool, good. For us that have grown up sort of influenced by like the desert sessions or the desert scene, we feel an immense creativity. And did you always find that landscape was inspiring?
Oh yeah.
It didn't grow on you, it was just like always there?
No, the first time I went to Joshua Tree was in 1982. My band, The Modifiers from Memphis, Tennessee. We were driving to play a show in LA, and on the way there, we had some time to kill and saw that there was a national park and decided to drive through, and we went through and we all fell in love with it. And then I kind of forgot about it for a while, and I was living in LA, and then towards like 87 or 88, like 5 or 6 years later, I kept seeing car commercials because it's really beautiful out there, and the lighting's perfect, and it looks alien. And I just started seeing like lots of 50s movies were filmed out there, you know, like giant spider movies and all sorts of weird stuff. And then a lot of car commercials. And oh yeah, I wonder where that place is, because I've kind of forgotten. And when I looked, I was like, oh, it's only 2 hours away. I'll just take mushrooms and drive out there and trip out. And so I started going out there quite a bit and having a great time.
Do you think there's an importance with psychedelics in this genre of music that is kind of, you know, tied to it? Do you?
I don't think it's important, again, because a lot of the musicians that make psychedelic-y rock don't really do psychedelics. I always liked doing psychedelics when I was a kid, so it definitely influenced me. And like, stoner rock don't even smoke weed or, you know, really drink or anything.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird oxymoron. All these bands that you think really love to party, they actually just want to smoke weed and go to bed.
Well, it's funny because I remember at one point in like the late 90s, Josh from Queens of the Stone Age and I were talking, and people would always ask like, hey, you know, stoner rock, man. He's like, I fucking hate that name. I hate that fucking name, man. And they asked Fred one time, they were like, so what do you think about this stoner rock moniker? He's like, man, if they bring us weed and drugs, yeah, man, I'm down, totally down with it. That's a better answer. That's better than saying fuck that stuff. So,
Bring it on.
bring it on.
Do you have a favorite type of like whiskey or alcohol, or what do you like to drink when you're taking some time off?
I'm not a huge drinker, but I'm kind of a whiskey guy, and my friend Bingo and I just started a mezcal company, and we love that. It's a really great mezcal. And tequila and mezcal seem to be the drink of the desert because they're cultivated in the desert typically. So people seem to kind of go that direction.
Speaking of picking your poisons, have you ever been stung by scorpion or rattlesnake out there in the desert?
No, I've only seen one rattlesnake, and I'm not really scared of snakes because I had snakes when I was a kid. But if you've ever seen a rattlesnake, they're fucking scary. You definitely don't want to get close to one. My friend asked me to come help her kill one, or at least move it, and that thing, that's pretty scary. And we see a lot of scorpions. It rained like a month ago, and we were out with our Scorpion light, which is a UV light. Typically you see like one or two, and we saw what, like 20. And we're like, fuck, man, this is like Scorpion.
So you were just working with Earthless on recording Black Heaven. How was that experience?
That was phenomenal, because those guys are really cool guys and great musicians. And it was a really quick session. I think we had 8 days to do the whole record. And we came in and just set up, got some tones, and just went for it. And they're really some of the best players around. If you get a chance, you're bringing them here on the 8th?
Yeah, we've got them here October 8th.
October 8th. So go see Earthless. It's a 2-hour Jimi Hendrix solo that will blow your mind.
Yeah, it doesn't really stop, does it?
Oh my God. And I heard that they're bringing the light show too.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, have you seen that before?
Mad Alchemy.
Mad Alchemy light show, yeah.
So if that's something about psychedelics that you want to be in,
Yeah.
that's kind of that advantage.
I would never recommend doing psychedelics except for at this show.
No, that's dangerous.
You're on record.
So we're talking about this earlier, but there's the soul and the soul branch of the Luna, and it kind of it seems like it's bigger than a studio now. It's sort of like an extra member of the band. Did you anticipate that happening, or what was the whole idea behind starting it, and then now the genesis and how it's become?
Well, I don't think we ever anticipated it, but Fred was definitely drawn to that place, and he was a very much larger than life person, and his whole vision and the way he put the place together and drew me in to help him create that place it was his whole vision of the place, because I would have never thought of moving out there. And when we started the studio, thrift stores and swap meets it was so incredible out there. For $1 you could find the coolest stuff. So we were talking about this the other day, where you would move into a house and within 2 weeks you would be full of the coolest art and everything, because you could spend literally like $40 and your whole house would be furnished with free couches, organs. We at one point we had like 10 organs at our house, because they were literally $5 at every thrift store, and we would just buy every one. And they were on the porch, sitting out in the front yard, in the bedroom, So it helped a lot just because it was so inexpensive. Plus, when we moved out there, it was so cheap to live there. And it's still really cheap compared to cities, but back then, it was, $500 for a 3-bedroom house, but there were no jobs either. So you're kind of, and we were touring all the time, so that's why I moved out there, because I didn't really have to work at the Walmart or whatever.
So you made your own job at your house.
Yeah.
Smart. But do you think it's important to have that like DIY in a scene to sort of make it awesome?
Oh yeah, I think DIY, that's what built rock and roll. Since the beginning of rock and roll, it was always about that.
What do you think of the genesis of rock and roll now, and sort of what it was when you first started out and what it is now?
I think it's the same. I think there's just different different, I wouldn't say venues, but different ways of getting things started with your friends and making it happen. It's always someone with a cool idea that, yeah, fuck yeah, we're just gonna rent this warehouse. I don't care how we're gonna do it. Once we get in the warehouse, we're gonna decorate it and make it cool, and people are gonna wanna come here, and when we make more money, we're gonna buy more stuff to make it cool. It's kind of what we tried to do with the studio. Is just, I've never taken a vacation with any money I've made at the studio. It always goes back into either repairing gear or buying cooler stuff, so that when the next people come, there's more stuff to choose from.
A lot of people find you, it sounds like, in proposition you to go up there and to record. Who was the most that you're shocked by?
Was I shocked by?
Yeah, that reached out to you to record there.
I don't think anyone's shocked me. I've always been very happy that anyone called, but I can't think of anyone that shocked me.
Do you have an open door policy for your studio? Or
Absolutely.
not?
Yeah.
And then, so I read that you also cook everybody meals? Do you think it's important to be hospitable for that?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Do you think that it's important to not have like pretensions or welcoming people into the studio?
Of course.
And it sounds like a lot of people also come up and they just come up to your studio and they don't ask. And you
It's
get
not
one.
cool at all. It's not cool at all. And the last thing you ever want to see is people coming to your house that you have no idea who they are or why they're coming. Especially when you have about 20 no trespassing signs.
What do you think it is that makes people think that that's okay or inappropriate?
I have no idea. I would never do that ever.
No, I wouldn't do that.
I had a huge bummer one time because I was in the middle of a session and it was in July, so it was super hot. And I was trying to repair something and I was underneath an amp and just sweaty, and we're in the middle of a take while I'm recording this, and a mother and father and their kid who was like 60 came to the door and there's, hey, can we come in and look at your studio? I was like, fuck no, you can't come into your fucking studio. What are you fucking crazy? It's like 20 no trespassing signs. You're in the middle of this, and they were just like, oh my God, this is what you're fucking teaching your kid? Like, well, we came all the way from Germany, like, to fucking go past 20 signs and say, don't come here? Like, and then after they left, of course, I felt pretty horrible, but I was like, who the fuck teaches their kid? Like, I mean, I know it says don't come up here, but, you know, that it couldn't mean us, because we're way too cool to. Yeah, sorry.
So we were thinking that we would be able to open this up to the floor. How do you feel?
Hell yeah.
Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask?
I understood you did some work for Boru Vodka, where you could talk about that.
I'd say you saw that commercial.
What did you?
Boru Vodka, when you and your lady are having that special time. Yeah. Yeah, we did a commercial for Boru Vodka. They liked it. We sent them a couple of commercials until the last one. I think we crossed the line with their, when you and your special lady are gonna have a nice evening and you want to go all the way, it's Boru Vodka. They didn't really write us back. I'm glad you know about the Boru Vodka.
So I got a mic here, if you guys, yeah.
Hey Dave, how's it going, man? Thanks for coming. Just curious, like, I like to play music as well, and I was wondering if there was like one moment in particular where you were like, I'm gonna play music for the rest of my life. I know it, like this is gonna happen. Like, was there one point where you're like, I'm in this, I'm doing it?
Definitely. My first time I ever played on stage when my band was called Snatch. And we played our high school talent show when I was 16. And our drummer didn't show up for the show, so that was one thing that was kind of a hindrance. But we nevertheless made it through. And I remember we played Heartbreaker by Grand Funk Railroad.
Oh, nice.
And we played Hang On To Yourself by David Bowie. And I remember a couple of girls came up after the show and were like, you know, you play guitar really good. Definitely doing this for the rest of my life.
It's always a woman. It's always...
Yep.
That's awesome.
And the old rock and roll circuit, who's the wildest dude you've ever come across?
He's crossed the line a few times, but for the most part, I used to love touring with him because he would always wake up later, but you could always tell when he woke up because he'd be laughing about what crazy shit he did the night before with his maniacal laugh. And for the most part, he was pretty good. Occasionally he would cross the line of good taste, but when he wasn't, it was pretty hilarious.
So Dave, you guys are out in the desert and you've got your studio out that way. Obviously it's pretty hot and pretty remote. And you know, out that way, has there ever been issues with like the heat or power issues, given the fact that you guys are so far away from anything out that way?
Well, definitely during July and August, it's not as fun to record, because especially for the engineer, because for the rest of the band, you can always kind of like stand in front of the fan. I don't really have like a AC unit like this. I have a swamp cooler, which is an evaporative cooler. It kind of, it's a turbine that water sucks. Anyway, it's not like an AC unit, so it gets fucking hot. And you put people in the back room without fans, and you can't have the air conditioner running back there because you're recording. So yeah, it gets pretty gnarly sometimes. But we've done some of our coolest records in the summer because people are sweaty and like trying to get through. Like, I can't fuck up, man. I gotta get out of this hot box.
So they use power running to the studio, or do you run generators?
No. Power's fun there because I mean we're in town. It's not like we're super remote. We're actually right in the town.
Do you have any noise complaints?
Never. When we first started the studio, the name of the street is named after the people that lived across the street. And when they were alive, they were an older couple, and they really liked Fred a lot because he was such a cool guy. They never once complained. And then now his son and girlfriend live there, and they're super cool. They actually, every time I'm like, hey, I have this band, they're gonna be super loud. Yeah, we love it. We love it when you have a band there. It's cool.
If Hang On to Yourself was, what's your moment? Is that one of your favorite albums? Do you think Ziggy Stardust, or do you have a most influential?
Ziggy Stardust is one of my favorites. I bought that album for my sister the year that it came out. That's what she wanted for Christmas. And I think that album came out in 72, maybe? So I was like 11. And I bought that for my sister, so that is one of my favorite albums. I still put it on, and I still go back, and the production on that album is really, really interesting.
Do you listen for that a little bit more since you do some producing? And
Oh, definitely.
And do you hear errors mostly? Is that something that you pay attention to?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have any favorite record stores in the area or in Canada?
I like every record store because it's always cool to just dig through. Like we were at Underground earlier looking around. They had a lot of great records there. That was the only one I've been to here. I saw another one, but I can't remember the name of it. Haven't been there.
Oh, yeah, that's Military Records. That's
Yeah.
downtown. Yeah, the desert sounds like a really, really wild place. I mean, here we have a lot of similar things as Palm Springs, so it's golf course communities and gated communities, and it's pretty conservative. So do you have any words, I guess not words, because we went over this, but anything for people that are, playing something a little bit differently in a small scene, something that they should pursue?
Just whatever speaks to them.
Yeah.
I think always go for your heart and soul, like whatever is sent to you, because it's nothing you can mind, it's just whatever is given to you to do.
Yeah, I got another question. What do you find is the best time of the day to get like the best sound? Like maybe when the weather's like cooling, and your tube amps, your tubes are at a certain temperature, and all of a sudden you're like, man, 7 o'clock rolls around, this is the time to record, man. It's like, it sounds the best.
I don't really have anything like that. I know a lot of people, we used to do a lot of sessions that would go from like noon till 4 or 5, like just as long as people could stay awake. And you always realize like, man, that last 6 hours was kind of a wash because everyone's beat. And then the next day's fucked because everyone was just going on fumes anyway.
Right.
And so now what we've been doing for most sessions, I've found that like 2 to 10 or 11, like not putting a hard curfew on it, but like starting when people have gotten up and have like a little lunch and then go to where it's not so late that they can wake up and go do something in the morning. And it's the amount of work you get done doing a schedule like that it's crazy how much more work you get done in 8 hours than what you try to do in 15, because it always just fucks you the next day.
Is it true that, what was it, Lake from Emerson, Lake and Palmer tried to buy your guitar?
Well, it was before I owned the guitar,
Oh, okay.
but he had gone. I have this guitar. It was made by a place in Memphis called Strings and Things, And in the early 70s, they made 5 guitars, and there were old Les Pauls that they made into double cutaways, which is, they just cut like at the top part so it matched them. Anyway, I don't know if anybody has a Les Paul or knows what the fuck I'm talking about, but anyway, they made 5 guitars, and when I was a kid, I went into the store with my brother, and the one that I owned was in a glass case, and this was like in 1974, maybe, and it was $2,000, which I don't know what that would be today, like 10 grand or something, but the most expensive guitars you can buy today are 58 Les Pauls that there go for like $750,000, and they were like $700 at that point. So anyway, there's a picture of Greg Lake from Emerson Lake and Palmer playing the guitar I have, but he opted for an acoustic guitar instead. And instead, I remember seeing that guitar and thinking like Excalibur, like if I ever get enough money to buy a guitar, that's what I would buy. And a few years later, it was in my friend's guitar store. I guess a Coke dealer had bought it and used it, and kind of fucked it up a little bit. So I bought it like in '78 for $800, which was a fuck of a lot of money back then. Ended up, now I still have it though. So I've had that 40 years, which is pretty crazy.
What bands inspired you to start playing or influenced you to start playing?
My brother had a bunch of bands. My brother Jack had a band called, he had a band called Gasper Ghoul, and then he had a band called Spider's Web. And they played mostly stuff like Alice Cooper and whatever, like Beatles and stuff. They kind of inspired me more than anyone because I would go sit at their rehearsals and hang out. But I loved everything. Luckily, when I was a kid, my parents had all sorts of cool records, and we were encouraged to listen to music. Like the only time my mom ever bummed out is when I was like 19 or 20. She heard me playing Fear, the record, at my house, and she came in and said, "If you could never play that album in the house again, that would make me really happy."
What was your first instrument that you started playing?
A guitar.
Do you have a personal favorite instrument? Is it guitar?
No, I like synthesizers a lot. They're fun because you can they sound so crazy. But I played guitar, bass, synthesizers, and all the bands I've played in. So they're all fun.
There's not one or the other. You do a lot of percussion. Do you like the drums? Do you like the drums? What's about percussion is like the thing?
Percussion's really hard. I don't know if many people know this, but a lot of drummers suck at percussion. Like tambourines, they confuse the hell out of 90% of drummers. Like the best drummer you know can probably go like, I don't know what that, like they'll like, yeah, I can play tambourine. They try and they're like, but percussion is a whole different animal, really.
There's like a renaissance of music now, like the sort of older type of music, style of music. Do you think that that's like an homage, or do you think that that's a rip-off?
Homage, for sure. I think it's just being influenced by whatever you like.
Do you think it's important to be in a certain area, like let's say there's a lot of people who travel down to Vancouver and they travel out to play. Do you think it's important to be in those cities to gain some traction?
No, I know. I mean, I don't know. It's typical with like the grunge scene. You have to be in Seattle, but as soon as that explodes, then it's something else. Or, I mean, I'm old enough to just see like, it seems like when anyone chases something that's popular, that's when it loses popularity. Like, everybody was totally down with Guns N' Roses, and then the grunge scene, and then rap, and it's just like, as soon as you start chasing, this is the next, it's like, kids don't want that.
Were you a part of the show where Axl Rose called you guys the pigeons of shit metal?
Oh, yeah.
How was that?
Well, that was an interesting show because we played in Cleveland, Ohio, and we flew from LA to Cleveland on Thanksgiving Day, which is interesting to fly on Thanksgiving Day. And we were flying with the cast of A Christmas Story. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that awesome movie, but they were all on our plane because they do a giant parade in Cleveland the day after Thanksgiving. And so they were all at our show with us. And I was watching the show from the front because my friend Robin Fink was playing guitar. A couple other friends were in the band and all the techs, and we were like, yeah, it's gonna be the best tour ever, man. And the Suicide Girls were the opening act,
Yeah.
and they got booed off the stage. So it was like, you know, I'm not a huge fan of the Suicide Girls, or I'm not a fan. It was just interesting that someone would get booed off the stage at a rock show. You came early enough to see them. And so I was watching, I'm like, yeah, these guys are pretty cool. And the first thing that happened is Axl started like, yelling on stage, and then the next thing he was like, yeah, who came here to see the fucking Pigeons of shit metal? And I'm like, what? Kind of weird. He's like, yeah, well they suck, so fucking final show of the tour, they're off the tour. That's weird, it's the first show of the tour. And that was kind of...
What was backstage like after that? That must have been an awkward meeting.
It wasn't that awesome. Yeah, it's kind of a bummer. I think it did a lot for the band though, because we got a lot of press.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like a...
It was a total bummer because, you know, like we had so many friends on that tour and we were like excited because first of all, Guns N' Roses fans,
Yeah.
we all are.
Yeah.
And all of our friends that were working was like, yeah, it's gonna be great. We're gonna hang out every day. It was literally one night. Fuck these guys.
Yeah, so they paid for your flight home, or did you guys just have the end of the tour go? Did you guys just leave?
Well, Jesse got paid a lot of money for that tour. The rest of us didn't really get paid because kind of went to but they did make money off the tour because it was a contract, so
Yeah.
they had to pay for the tour.
Do you have a favorite gig that you've personally seen? Like a favorite live show of another artist?
Oh yeah, it's so many. I mean, I don't even know where to start, you know, really. There's so many great shows. I sold weed to the Bad Brains on their first tour and watched their show, and that was probably one of the best shows I've ever seen. It was their first tour. They were playing a place called The Antenna in Memphis, and that was pretty mind-blowing. But I mean, just, there's so many amazing shows, and since I started going to see shows.
What does touring life generally look like? How does it wear on you?
Well, touring life is not that fun sometimes. I mean, obviously it's cool because you get to see some of your friends, but you know, a lot of it's waiting around. So that's in itself not that, you know, like you get to go out in the town, that's cool, and then you sound check, and then you're like, okay, 5 hours, we'll just sit around here and
Yeah, so does anybody else have any questions for today? I think I saw you still have one.
Not, no.
Sure.
Hello.
hey.
You talked about like fluctuations in genre success and popularity. And I think as the industry goes, it becomes more genres and kind of compartmentalization of music. And I'm just wondering if you think, you know, an up and coming band should have that direction and kind of hone in on a genre, or if you think genres can be creatively limited.
I think they can be creatively limited. I don't think that you should, I mean, if you want to, sure, but I think you're kind of second guessing what people like. I think if you just do what you think best, you know, I think that's always worked for everyone that's succeeded, you know, pretty much, you know, I can't think of that many bands that have like, I need to be this, and then they got huge. I think they were already doing what they did, and I could be wrong.
Fuck yeah.
There's someone else over here.
When you have an artist like Kurt Weill come out, how much time do you take to find tones for the album and kind of
well, with Kurt, who is awesome, he came at the tail end of a Tanarwin session. I don't know if you know that band. They're from North Africa. They're incredibly awesome. And he was invited to play on their record, and then his record started after theirs. So we already had tones going, but it kind of depends, because I think Kurt might have done like a week to 10 days, so probably not that long. And I was there for the first day of that session, and then the next day I left for New Orleans because I was going to play with some shows, so I was only there for one day. But typically, my studio personally is not the studio you spend a week doing a snare sound. It's more the vibe, and you get set up and you get levels and you start going, and then you hone in the sounds as you go. But I mean, I was talking about this with a few people today about how it's interesting, because a lot of bands that come to my studio, if they're younger, they don't really understand the concept of the difference between what they're going to do and what their favorite bands who are very successful do, which is maybe the band that's very successful that they're trying to emulate or go for has a year to make a record, and they literally will take a few days to do a snare sound. People don't quite do that as much as they used to when there was $1 million budgets, but people have to realize if you have 8 days to do a record, start to finish, you don't have a whole day to get snare sound and make everything perfect. And it all boils down to the song anyway. If the song is great, think about all your favorite records. Some of them aren't the best sounding records, but the song is amazing. And a lot of my favorite records aren't the best sounding records, but they are such great songs that you can't help but love them. And if you have that time, that's awesome. But if you don't, I say just get in there and do it. But yeah, with Kurt, probably not that long, because they weren't there for that long. And the really cool thing about that is I love Kurt a lot, and that album's really cool. They did, I think, about half of that album at the studio and then at other places. But I just had Stella, who played drums on that record, out, and she told me that was the most fun session that either of them had ever had being at that studio, which was a huge, huge compliment for me, because I was like, you guys, how was it? Did you have a good time? We both had the best. I think they were really living it up, and they were, I think they're nighttime people, so they were kind of recording from 10 or 11 at night till 6 or 7 in the morning, so they were kind of doing a completely different schedule than what I usually do.
Okay. Which do you prefer, playing on stage or being in the studio?
I prefer to be on stage. Stage is fun. But I like studio too. Studio is great too, because you're laughing and you're just doing whatever you want, so.
Has there ever been a time that shit's hit the fan in the studio, there's been a massive blunder, so things are going all good, and obviously it's analog, and the tape breaks, or...
What's that now, sorry?
Has there ever been a time in the studio where shit's hit the fan, as in you're recording, everything's going well, and it's analog, and then someone does something, and it's like, oh, that was a really good take, and you fucked it up, or...
Oh yeah, I did that at a Desert Sessions one time. I totally recorded over a whole song. And I think on it says remixed by Dave Catchy. It was one of those moments of yeah, this is all, oh shit. It's recorded over the song. But it worked out because the other version was great too. So. But yeah, it can definitely hit the fan. That's why I don't engineer the sessions. I engineer my own stuff, but I don't engineer the sessions. I hire someone, I do mic placement, oh, you need this guitar with this, or this bass and this amp and stuff, but I don't like doing the Pro Tools and stuff, because I don't want to be that guy again that recorded over something.
Do you think that live energy on stage is a high?
Oh yeah, definitely. So fun, so fun.
Where do you find inspiration for writing and producing?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't know, it just kind of comes to you all the time, you know, like the weirdest moments, you know, just. A lot of the inspiration comes from just picking up an instrument and just letting it take you to where it wants you to go.
Has the beard reached maximum length, or do you think you can get that baby to the floor?
I think it's gonna go floor length.
Yeah, man.
It's taking
Full
a while,
Gandalf.
you know, I'm not going anywhere for a while, so it's gonna.
Yeah. The sweater though, is that alpaca or is that just like beard trimmings?
It's beard trimming.
I knew it, I fucking knew it.
This is when it was red. And this is back before it turned gray.
You said something earlier that stuck with me. A scorpion light. What the fuck is a scorpion light?
A scorpion light is a UV light, like a black light.
Yeah.
But they glow when you, and
That's
you
fucking
literally
cool.
can, if you put a black light out in the desert from like 50 feet, you can see one glowing. So you carry one of those when you're walking around barefoot, just to make sure. Because there's really nothing in the desert that I'm worried about except for stepping on a scorpion.
What about Benny Rings?
What's that?
Benny Rings.
Oh, yeah, the salvages? Yeah. We don't really have vinegaroons per se in the desert. Those are like in other parts of the United States. But people do call salvages vinegaroons, and they are the creepiest looking insects in the world, and they're super fast. And we see them all the time. And I'll tell you a really funny story, is one day I put on some pants, and as soon as I latched my belt, there was one crawling on my balls. And I knew exactly what it was, and I had to get out of my pants as quickly as possible without getting bitten. I've never been bitten, but I do hear that they hurt. But my balls were safe, so
I guess-
the rest is easy now.
I guess it's a good thing the beard didn't reach a terminal length, so you can still see it, huh? Yeah, so speaking of terminal length, I think we're at the end of the hour here. So we've got about 5 more minutes to catch a happy hour, so
Okay.
I think,
You guys
yeah.
want to go get happy hour?
Yeah, so thanks for everyone for coming out, and thanks Dave for sharing the stage with me.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me. Thanks for coming. I've got Mojave Rules rolling papers for anybody that needs cigarette papers for later. So I thought there'd only be 3 people here, so luckily I brought enough for everybody, just like chewing gum. Thank you. Thanks for.